New York, with its towering skyscrapers and relentless pace, was home to David Moore, a 34-year-old who had spent the past 7 years working at Genesis Tech, a mid-sized technology company. For David, his job was more than just a paycheck. It was a symbol of his dedication and competence. He had started as a junior analyst and, through sheer effort, had risen to become one of the company's top project managers. Despite his flawless performance, David had a complicated relationship with his direct superior, Michael Grant. Michael, the regional manager of Genesis Tech, was a proud and authoritarian man, known for his explosive temper. He never acknowledged David's hard work and often took credit for the team's successes, leaving David in the shadows. During a pivotal meeting held in the company's glass-walled conference hall, Michael publicly humiliated David in front of colleagues and executives. While David was presenting an innovative project he had led, Michael interrupted him multiple times, questioning his decisions and insinuating that the project was doomed to fail. The room, once filled with enthusiasm, fell into an awkward silence. At the end of the meeting, Michael called him aside. "David, your lack of vision is hurting the company. Consider this your last chance." A week later, without warning, David was summoned to HR. There, he received the news. He was officially terminated. The reason? Incompatibility with the company's culture. David left the building feeling a mix of shame and indignation. He hadn't just lost his job, he saw years of hard work and dedication reduced to nothing. As he walked through New York's busy streets, an idea began to form in his mind. This won't end here, he thought. David spent the next few days in a whirlwind of emotions. He felt humiliated and betrayed, but he also began to experience something he hadn't felt in a long time: determination. He knew Michael had used his position of power to manipulate the situation. But instead of sinking into self-pity, he decided to turn the experience into a catalyst for something greater. David spent the first few weeks after his dismissal reassessing his skills and analyzing the market. He had an extensive network of contacts and a clear understanding of the tech sector. He also knew that Genesis Tech, despite being a solid company, was struggling with innovation and strategic leadership issues he had tried unsuccessfully to address in his previous role. He began frequenting co-working spaces and attending startup meetups, soaking up new ideas and connecting with investors and entrepreneurs. At one of these events, he met Laura Simmons, an experienced investor intrigued by his story and ideas. David shared his vision of how Genesis Tech could be transformed into a more modern and efficient company. Laura saw potential in David and offered him valuable advice. "If you truly believe in your vision, why not try to acquire Genesis Tech? It sounds crazy, but with the right investors, it's possible." The idea seemed absurd at first, but David couldn't stop thinking about it. He began researching Genesis Tech's financial situation and discovered that the company was more vulnerable than he had imagined. Despite maintaining a strong external image, Genesis Tech had been losing contracts and investor interest due to poor internal management, something David had long suspected. With Laura's help, he started crafting an ambitious plan to acquire Genesis Tech. He knew he needed allies, so he reached out to discontented former colleagues and investors who had distanced themselves from the company due to Michael's leadership. Within a month, David assembled a group of investors willing to support his vision. With Laura's expertise, they negotiated terms and identified the perfect moment to act. The opportunity arose when one of Genesis Tech's largest shareholders decided to sell their stake due to ongoing leadership failures. David and his team seized the chance. With financial backing from his investors and a compelling restructuring plan, they acquired a majority stake in the company. It was official. David was now the principal shareholder of Genesis Tech. On the day David formally took control of the company, he returned to Genesis Tech's headquarters. He walked through the same doors where he had been humiliated weeks earlier, but this time, the atmosphere was different. Employees, stunned by the news of the leadership change, watched him with curious and hopeful eyes. Michael, still unaware that David was behind the acquisition, was summoned to a meeting in the main conference room. When he entered and saw David sitting in the CEO's chair, his face turned pale. David looked directly at Michael, maintaining his composure. "Michael, as of today, you are relieved of your duties. Consider this an opportunity to reevaluate your career. Good luck." Michael tried to argue, but his authority had vanished. He left the room under the watchful eyes of executives and employees, who finally realized that the era of toxic leadership was over. Assuming control of Genesis Tech was just the beginning for David. Though satisfied to see Michael gone, he knew the real challenge lay ahead. The company was in a critical state, with demotivated employees, outdated processes, and waning investor confidence. David would need every ounce of his experience, vision, and determination to transform the company and prove that this was about more than just revenge. The first step was to rebuild trust. David gathered all employees for an open meeting. He knew the team was exhausted after years of authoritarian leadership, and many were skeptical about real change. Standing in the company's large auditorium, David spoke with clarity and humility. "I started here just like many of you. I know what it's like to work hard and feel like your ideas aren't heard. That changes now. We're here to rebuild Genesis Tech as a company where talent is valued and innovation leads the way. This is a new beginning." The initial reaction was cautious, but David's honest tone began to break the ice. He promised his leadership would be based on collaboration, not fear. David quickly implemented significant changes. He began by updating internal systems, investing in cutting-edge technology, and creating open spaces for collaboration. Most importantly, he launched a talent recognition program to ensure innovative ideas received the support they deserved. Employees who had considered leaving the company began to change their minds. The tense atmosphere gave way to a lighter, more productive environment. David also rehired former colleagues who had left because of Michael, offering them new opportunities to grow. As he rebuilt the internal team, David also needed to regain the trust of investors. Drawing on his experience and a clear strategic plan, he demonstrated that Genesis Tech could not only compete, but also lead the industry. During a presentation to major investors, David highlighted the company's past leadership failures and outlined his plan for change. "We're focused on creating products that truly matter. This will be a company that sets trends, not just follows them." The presentation was a success. Enthusiasm began to return, and the first signs of financial recovery quickly emerged. A moment of reflection. A month after taking over as leader, David sat in his new office, gazing out at the New York skyline through the large window. The journey had been intense, but he knew it was only the beginning. He thought about the years spent under Michael's shadow, the moments of frustration, and the day he was humiliated and fired. It all seemed distant now. He no longer felt anger, only gratitude for having used those difficult moments as fuel for something greater. An unexpected encounter one day, while walking to a nearby cafe, David crossed paths with Michael, who looked tired and nervous. Michael, visibly uncomfortable, tried to avoid eye contact, but David approached him. "Michael," David said calmly, "I hope you've found something that gives you purpose." Michael didn't respond immediately, but eventually muttered, "I underestimated you. Good luck with the company." David simply nodded and walked on. There was no longer any resentment in his heart. As the months passed, Genesis Tech began showing clear signs of recovery. Under David's leadership, the company not only regained its competitiveness, but also started gaining recognition as a model of innovation and humane management. The internal environment transformed, and the team, once driven by fear, was now motivated by creativity and trust. David knew the company's success would depend on a bold and clear vision. He implemented strategic changes that had been overlooked for years by the previous management. One of the most significant was the creation of an innovation lab, where interdisciplinary teams could work on experimental ideas without fear of failure. One of these ideas led to the development of a revolutionary project management software, which attracted the attention of major corporations. Within months, the product became the company's flagship, generating a wave of new contracts and partnerships. David also kept his promise to recognize the team's talents. He launched an annual program called Architects of the Future, where employees who demonstrated innovative ideas and exceptional results were rewarded and given the opportunity to present their visions directly to the company's board. The first ceremony was a milestone. During the event, David took the stage and delivered an emotional speech. "This award isn't just about results, it's about courage. courage to think differently, to challenge the status quo, and to do what's right, even when it's hard. Each of you has that courage. The audience gave a standing ovation, and many employees admitted it was the first time they truly felt valued. While the company flourished, David also began rebuilding personal connections. He reconnected with friends and mentors who had supported him throughout his career, but had drifted away due to the tensions of his previous job. He also dedicated more time to his family, ensuring he would never again sacrifice his personal balance for a position. A year after taking over, Genesis Tech was named one of the most innovative companies in New York by a renowned business magazine. The award ceremony was held in a luxurious hall, and David was invited to speak about the company's transformation. Taking the stage, he looked out at the audience, which included industry leaders, investors, and his own team. Genesis Tech isn't just a company, it's a reflection of what we can achieve when we believe in our potential and work together. This award belongs to everyone who chose to build something bigger than themselves. The audience gave him a standing ovation, but for David, the true reward was seeing the pride on his team's faces. Though his relationship with Genesis Tech was at its peak, David still felt the need to reflect on his journey. He knew the person who had humiliated and fired him also deserved closure. One day, he arranged a meeting with Michael Grant, the former manager, now working at a small tech company, reluctantly accepted the invitation. When they met, Michael seemed like a different man, more humble, perhaps even regretful. David didn't speak of revenge or resentment. Instead, he extended his hand to Michael. "I had to lose everything to learn what truly matters, Michael. I hope you've found the same path." Michael, surprised by David's generosity, mumbled a few words of apology and thanked him for the gesture. For David, that meeting represented the closure of a chapter he no longer needed to carry. Over time, Genesis Tech not only solidified its position as a powerhouse in the tech sector, but also as a company admired for its innovative and inclusive culture. David implemented mentorship programs, giving young talent opportunities to learn and grow within the company. One of the most ambitious projects was the creation of a division focused on social impact. The team developed accessible technological tools for small businesses and underserved communities, proving that corporate success could coexist with social responsibility. 2 years after taking over, David received an award for exemplary leadership at a national ceremony. During his speech, he reflected on his journey. "Success is important, but the true impact lies in the lives we touch. This company isn't just about technology, it's about people. And the greatest privilege of my life has been leading a team that believes in that." He concluded with an inspiring message. "When you face challenges, remember that every fall is a chance to build something greater. That's how I started over, and that's how we changed everything." The audience gave a standing ovation, but for David, the greatest recognition was still seeing his team thrive. A personal closure. The night after the ceremony, David strolled through the streets of New York, reflecting on everything he had been through. He looked at the skyscrapers surrounding him, each representing stories of ambition, struggle, and achievement. He knew his journey had not been easy, but every moment of pain and perseverance had shaped who he was. David returned home, where his friends and family awaited him for an intimate celebration. With a glass of wine in hand, he raised a toast with a calm smile. "To the future, and to the lessons the past gave us to get here." Over the years, Genesis Tech became more than just a successful company. It became a symbol of transformation and resilience. Under David Moore's leadership, the organization thrived not only financially but also redefined what it meant to be a values-driven company. David's philosophy was clear: corporate success should always go hand in hand with integrity and empathy. He understood that the most lasting impact of his leadership would not be measured solely in numbers, but in how the company empowered people to grow. He launched a program called Leadership Legacy, designed to train future managers and leaders to foster healthy and inclusive team environments. Many participants implemented positive changes in their own divisions, creating a ripple effect that extended beyond the company's walls. Employees across different levels often remarked, "David leads by example. He shows us that we don't have to choose between being strong and being fair." Genesis Tech's social impact division grew, spearheading technological projects that benefited underserved communities in the US and around the world. One of the most ambitious initiatives was the creation of a free educational app for young entrepreneurs, teaching fundamental business and tech skills. David believed that giving back to society was more than an obligation. It was a way to prove that true success is shared. He frequently visited communities impacted by the company's projects, listening to stories of lives transformed by the work they had started together. On a personal level, David found the balance he had always sought. He nurtured genuine friendships, stayed close to his family, and began exploring hobbies he had previously set aside, such as photography and travel. During a trip to rural Vermont, walking along trails surrounded by golden autumn trees, he reflected on the journey he had taken. The man who had been humiliated and fired years ago was now a stronger, more compassionate, and more fulfilled version of himself. At a special meeting at Genesis Tech's headquarters, David surprised his team by announcing his plan to step back from the company's day-to-day leadership. He had prepared a successor, a project manager he had personally mentored. "It's time to pass the baton," he said to the gathered team. "Genesis Tech has always been about you. I know it's in good hands." Though there were tears and heartfelt hugs, the team understood that David's spirit of leadership would remain embedded in the culture he had created. On his last night as CEO, David walked through the Genesis Tech headquarters. He passed the Innovation Lab, now bustling with young talent, and the recognition wall displaying photos of all the employees who had contributed to the company's growth. He stopped in front of the window of his old office and gazed at the New York skyline. It was a moment of absolute peace. He knew he had turned a chapter of humiliation into a story of triumph and purpose. David left Genesis Tech with the certainty that he had built something lasting. He was no longer defined by the humiliation he had endured or the revenge he might have sought. His legacy was far greater, one of transformation, impact, and the choice to lead with dignity. As he walked out of the building, the setting sun bathed the facade of the company he had helped rebuild. For David, it was a sign that, no matter how dark the moment, the future can always be illuminated by those who believe in the possibility of starting anew. This story reminds us that our greatest achievements can be built on the foundation of adversity. Leading with empathy and purpose transforms not only companies, but lives.